Working on it. We are live.
We are live.
Good morning. Good morning if you're in California, the West Coast, or good afternoon if you're on the East Coast. Audrey Addison Williams here from Global Leadership Coalition, and I'm so excited. We have an amazing program for you today, an important topic, and just two dynamic guests. I want to introduce Cheyenne Kramer, who's a friend and colleague probably for 20 years, maybe even longer. We don't want to say that. From Raleigh, North Carolina, and she is the producer, the brain behind this event on suicide, on preventing suicide, coming at it from a very different angle. So Cheyenne, just say hello to everyone.
Hello, and thank you so much for bringing us together today, Audrey.
I'm delighted. And so we're blessed to have Tami Johns. And so this amazing woman is an ordained minister, outreach minister at Unity Church of the Triangle in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I'm going to let her share her story as we go on with the program. But she has intimate knowledge of suicide and quite a story to tell. And so we invite you, if you're in the audience, if you hear this, if you want to tap in or ask a question, feel free to do that because we're live. I'm Audrey Addison Williams, and I wear a number of hats, but this is about Global Leadership Coalition. We started with virtual gathering of leaders back in March. Our purpose is to identify leaders that are doing amazing things and to link these leaders and then to support what they're doing. So this interview today is in service to Cheyenne, who's been one of our core members since March 24th, and we're delighted to support what she's doing. Cheyenne, who's been one of our core members.
Sorry.
Cheyenne is a massive networker, and so she has an amazing network of people that are helping her with this program. So I'm going to ask Cheyenne to tell us, set the stage. What's going to happen on September 21st? What is your motivation? Why are you doing this?
I'd be happy to share that. Yes, the event is called Ignite the Spark to eradicate suicide. And, SPARK is actually an acronym. And of course, my brain will probably freeze up. But, it's all about suicide prevention, promoting open dialogue, because too many people are not talking about what's becoming a silent epidemic. A is all about addressing societal issues. R is about rejuvenating body, mind, and spirit. And K is just simply about kindness to all. Because, we know that one of those key things that is happening rampantly in our society is cyberbullying, bullying in general. And, we all got to get back to being a little bit more heart-centered. The event actually has got 4 pieces to it now. It's starting with August 9th, which is a Friday evening, where we have an amazing young man named Chris Hendricks, who has offered to donate his time to our cause to have a benefit concert here in Raleigh. So we're inviting people out to the concert. This young man has cerebral palsy and has said, heck no, I'm not going to let that stop me from living my purpose. And so his message is very uplifting, very enlightening, and he's really good at unifying people. So that's part 1. Part 2 is when we're going to be.
Where is the concert, Cheyenne? Where is the concert going to be?
The concert's at the First Alliance Church in Raleigh. It's 4400 Buffalo Road, 7 p.m. And we actually do have a separate page that people can register for that. And under this video, I'm going to put the QR codes that people can use to be able to get to the different pages that are involved. So we'll make sure people can get to it. But then the main event on September 21st is going to be kicked off, and Reverend Johns is going to be one of our panelists talking about suicide from some very different perspectives. We have people who have survived suicide. We have people who have lost a parent, lost a child, lost a spouse. And so everybody's going to be talking about how they have found ways to move through their grieving process, how they have found ways to redirect their life journey after a suicide attempt. And all of these things are going to be designed to help uplift people and help them understand that there is life out here and there's ways to make life worth living. So that's a key piece. We also are having the wellness experience where we're bringing together lots of different types of wellness practitioners and encouraging people to test out some of these things that they may never have heard of, may never have tried. Try them out and see what they do for you, because experience is a great teacher. And then the final component is that evening, we actually have a permit for Dorothea Dix Park, and we're bringing together people to have a prayer vigil and a mastermind to help bring life to these incredible visions that I keep finding people have for creating healing centers. Because we recognize, and I'm sure you guys agree with this can't be just a one-day event. We have to have a movement that is moving forward and providing things after the event as well.
So Cheyenne, tell us where the event where Reverend Johns is presenting. Where's that event going to be?
It is at Unity of the Triangle, and it's the address is actually 5570 Munford Road in Raleigh. For people who are in Raleigh, you might be familiar with the area. It's actually the Pleasant Valley area of Raleigh where there's a Walmart right next door.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Thank you. For me personally, the reason I'm excited and feel privileged to be supporting this is that I lost a dear friend and colleague to suicide. In fact, it was like 5 days after Cheyenne told me about her vision and shared it with me. 5 days later, I got a call from Taziq's father that he had committed suicide, and I'm still not over it. Suicide has become almost a pandemic, and as Cheyenne says, it's the silent killer. People are not talking about it. So the first thing I want to acknowledge about this event and what Cheyenne is doing, she's bringing it out of the shadows, and people are talking about it. And the fact that we have a church supporting it, we have a church bringing it out of the shadows, and their outreach minister willing to talk about it. And so, it's once we talk about something, it is less frightening, less terrifying, but it's the sharing of information and the sharing of stories. I personally was called to UCSB here I'm in Santa Barbara because so many people in the LGBT community were committing suicide. It was an epidemic. They were being outed and committing suicide. And yet there's so many groups of people, seniors, veterans, the LGBT community. And nowadays it could be anyone. After the pandemic, life has just been really, really hard. And we can all relate to that. Some of us have never been able, we never went back to life before the pandemic, and we can never go there. But many of us have never been able to adjust, to move forward, to be happy and joyful about life. And so what Cheyenne is doing right now in the partnership with Unity of Triangle is so very important. Cheyenne, before we bring on Reverend Johns, I want to ask you to talk a little bit about how you got involved. Where did the invitation come from? How did you get connected to this event?
Sure. A lot of people know that my husband and I are full-time RVers. We've been on the road 5 years, and we'd actually been away from the Triangle for a couple of years. And some of our friends back here in the Triangle started talking to us and saying, my word, have you heard about all the suicides happening on college campuses in the Raleigh area? And I'm like, what? I mean, I had heard nothing about it. I knew nothing about it. And so I started to dig in and found there was actually media, people had been talking about this through the media. So it was definitely a real thing. And, I personally have lost 3 close friends to suicide, one in high school, One that was a close high school friend that I lost about 10 years ago, and then another business associate I was very close to, lost her about 7 years ago. So between the losses and just having that personal experience of losing people together with finding out, oh my goodness, it sounds like, we should go back to Raleigh and see what can we do to try to help change this trajectory.
And that's what I love about what Cheyenne is doing. She's outside of the box. In fact, she's thrown the box away, and she has said, "Let's look at this from various perspectives." So many times we blame the person's family. Actually, this is a societal problem. This is a societal problem caused by deeply rooted in the society in which we live. And the truth of the matter is, it is very difficult to acclimate to this crazy, crazy society, capitalism, and all of that. And so, what she's saying is, this is not your fault. We as a community are coming together to support you and your family, but there are other options. And she's not saying no to the traditional ways, but she's also opening up the spectrum and saying there are other options and other ways that we can be supportive, and even other holistic ways of dealing with it. And so I just honor you for that. I'm going to let you introduce Tami Johns. I had the privilege of meeting Reverend Johns just a couple days ago, and I tell you, I'm in awe of who she is. So why don't you introduce Tami, tell how you know each other, and then Tami, we turn it over to you.
Okay.
Thank you, Audrey. Well, and I kind of jokingly say, yeah, poor Tami, she got dumped with Cheyenne, but it's all good. We've been having a good time getting to know each other because it was really through a friend of mine who has been a long time member of Unity who said, "Oh my goodness, let's find out if Unity of the Triangle will help support what you're talking about doing." And after a few shuffles, I finally landed with Tami, and it's been a joy to get to know her story. I thank her for being actually a military veteran, as well as now an interfaith minister. And yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Johns and let her tell her story.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I appreciate being here, both of you. And this is a wonderful event that we're going to be looking at. And I wanted to just take a few moments and share a little bit about my story. I believe that when we share our stories, we know that we are not alone. And we share that information with people, and we can create connection and a sense of belonging. And I used to be embarrassed and ashamed of my story. And now I'm realizing that it is really, really important to be able to share this so that people know that you can come out of the darkness. There are times when you go through the dark. In order to know the light, we have to be able to experience the darkness and know how to walk through that. So my story is that it was I was in my early 40s, and I was with my lifelong partner, and we were in the process of adopting a child. We had a nice home. I had a successful job. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I had a successful job making a six-figure income, and we had two dogs. We had the perfect little family, the perfect little life. And in what seemed to be like a split second, it was actually over a 3-month period, I found that I lost all of that. And it was devastating for me. I went through a very dark period. I call it my wilderness, when I walked into the darkness, and I was depressed. I was angry. I had no idea what was happening to me. I was going through the cycles of grief, and I just couldn't understand. I was even angry at God. I'm like, "God, why would you do this to me?" And I couldn't understand how one person could sustain so much grief. Well, during the course of that, I was just really fighting and struggling to know what my purpose was. Why was all of this happening to me? And in one of my darkest moments, I decided that I couldn't take it anymore. I didn't have the fight. I didn't have the energy to do it anymore. And so I decided I was going to take my own life. Luckily, a friend of mine found me and went through the hospitalization and therapy and medication, and found my way back. And what I would say about that, and what I would say about that time in my life, is that it's okay, number one, to ask for help. If you need therapy, if you need to talk to your spiritual advisor or your pastor or whoever that is that you need to talk to, it's okay. And sometimes when we go through difficult situations, whether it's a really deep, dark depression, sometimes we need medication. I am not a doctor, but see a doctor if you feel like you need that kind of assistance to get through it. There's also the spiritual avenues that you can do, like praying and meditating and finding a support circle. And I found that those are the things that helped me through the journey. After I got through my recovery period, then I just reached out and I had my support group in place. That's a really important thing that I did not have at the time. I didn't feel like I could reach out to people and tell them what I was going through because I was ashamed. And we have to take the stigma of mental health and suicide, we have to take that shame away so that people feel comfortable sharing their stories. And what I realized is that as I was going through therapy and as I was recovering, that I didn't really want to die. I just didn't know how to live. And for me, that was a really important distinction because when we sometimes we're on the edge and we feel like we just can't do it anymore, we know that the universe has put us here for a purpose. And we have to know what our soul came here to experience. And in order to do that, we have to stay alive because we don't want our loved ones to suffer. And I know things can get very hard and very difficult. And I'm not saying that it's easy, but it is possible to get through it. Because right now I went on and I feel like I'm living my best life now. I became, as Cheyenne mentioned, and as Audrey mentioned, I became an interfaith minister because I want to continue to share my stories and I want to reach out and help others who are going through similar situations. And it is possible to recover from these things and get through a very dark time. And I just want to thank you for being able to share my story today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Reverend Johns. I'm just really touched and I honor you. I firmly believe that the only reason we go through anything in life is to be able to help somebody else. But not everybody believes that or is able to do that. I know that Dr. Brene Brown that says that the only way to get rid of shame is to talk about it. That's the only way to get rid of shame is to talk about it. And so the fact that you're talking about it so courageously and what you've done with your life is amazing. I want to ask you some questions though about back then. I want to just ask you, how long had you been thinking about suicide before you actually did it? And had you before you actually tried? And had you talked with anyone in your family or community about it prior to trying?
I talked to a friend of mine. I did not talk to my family because, like I said, I was just full of shame at the time. I talked to a friend of mine who tried to, get me through it, and it was very difficult. And if I think back about how long it was, I would say it was probably 3 to 4 months as I thought about it. I came up with a plan and how I would go about doing it, and because I just felt that things were hopeless for me. And that's why I decided to go ahead and do it. And luckily, like I said, a friend found me and things, evolved and turned out a different way.
Well, thank God, thank God. So the shame that you felt was because of all the many losses in your life and you felt like a failure? What was the shame, or was it because you were already contemplating suicide?
Well, it was a little bit of both, Audrey. It was, first of all, I felt like I was a spiritual person, I was successful, I was functional, and I felt like I wasn't going to be able to thrive anymore. And I thought people look people look at me differently because I thought, well, she's doing so well. She has a great life. And so she had some losses, get through it. And sometimes people say, just suck it up and get through it. And the shame came from I felt I wasn't strong enough to get through life circumstances, and I felt like a failure. So that was some of that shame.
And I'm sure that almost anyone I know I can relate to feeling like a failure. With COVID, I had no tools. There was nothing in my toolbox. There was nothing. After 30 years of spiritual growth, ordained minister, there was nothing in my toolbox. And I'm sure that there are people listening to this or that will be with you on the 21st that are feeling the exact same way. What would you suggest if someone has a family member and they suspect that the family member is contemplating suicide? What are some of the suggestions that a family member or a friend could do in that situation?
I would say be with the person in their moment. Don't try to make them be something that they can't be at the time, because that can just kind of escalate the feelings of failure. Because if you say, well, if you were strong enough, or if you were more spiritual enough, or if you prayed more, or there are a number of things that people can say to say, well, okay, I'm just not able to do that. So be supportive and meet the person where they are. Even if you have to go every single day and just check on that person or call that person and let them know that they are loved, they are embraced, and they are accepted. And I would also suggest, there are lots of resources out there. There's the suicide hotline. We mentioned other resources as far as a therapist, a psychiatrist, or, just see if you can encourage that person to seek help, to get some intervention, because sometimes we just need a little help pushing us and nudging us in the right direction.
And that's so very true. I know that I went through serious depression back in the early 90s, and it just came on all of a sudden. But, sometimes, well, depression is not always a bad thing. And so it's how we think about it, it's how people who know us think about it. Because often, as we move through life and different phases in life, transformation happens often as a result of some sadness, some loss. And so depression is not always negative. Now, this was a long time ago. So the church that I belonged to and was serving as a singles minister, I told a group of people, we were on a retreat. Only one of those people, and I thank God for her, Maddie Barron, she's gone now. She would drive from Mattawan to my house on campus of Rutgers, and she would bang on the window, ring the doorbell. She wasn't leaving. She was not going to leave. And Maddie would come in my house, and she would pick up the vacuum cleaner and start vacuuming. She would start washing dishes. People don't realize depression can leave us where we are not taking care of our bodies. We're just not functional. My children was with their father. And again, in religious circles, it's really hard because people believe if you were doing the right thing, this would not be happening to you. This would not be happening to you. But I thank God for Maddie. And then she'd pack a bag and she'd take me to her house. I eventually got through it. There were some things I had to deal with. There were some things from childhood that I was pressing down. But had it not been for her, I don't know what I would have done. I really don't know, because it was a lonely, very dark place. Let me ask you this, and this may be a little challenging, but there are people that still say, you love God, you serve God. Why does this happen to you? Why does this happen to people who love God and trust God? What's going on here?
Okay, so what I believe, and this is just my personal belief, I believe that before we come here to experience humanness, our souls set up experiences that we want to learn lessons from. And as hard as that may be to believe and to understand, if my soul wanted to experience learning how to get through challenging situations, then I'm only going to be able to learn that lesson by going through those challenging situations. So before I come here, I feel like my spirit and my soul, they pick my parents, my family, my situation, my life journey in order to learn lessons. And as we continue to move through life, we learn those lessons and we grow spiritually, we grow in mind, body, and spirit, and we become a better person, and we have experiences that transform us. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. And would you agree that even through the darkest nights or days that God, the source, is always with us? We're never left alone?
I agree. God does never leave us. I feel like if there's someone who moves, it's us. Who we move away from
Yes.
spirit, we move away from God, and God is just there waiting to embrace us and to have us feel the spirit in our lives so that we can become rejuvenated.
Well, you are absolutely amazing. Anyone listening that's in the Raleigh-Durham area, actually lived in the Triangle area, worked for North Carolina Central for a number of years. So if you're in that area and you are as impressed with Reverend Johns as I am, you might want to go to Unity of the Triangle. There in that area, it's a very diverse church, a church I know a little bit about. And so if you're in that area, please do. I mean, I'm in awe of who you are. And so if you've been looking for a church or looking for a community, just tap in. So why don't we bring Cheyenne back in and talk about this panel and what's going to happen, who else is on the panel that morning on the 21st. Thank you so much, Reverend John.
Thank you very much.
Certainly can do that. I did also have a thought also about because I remember the last time I really experienced myself a very dark time where I kind of was wondering whether I was supposed to stay here or not. And for me, it ended up being about the fact that I was just out of alignment with where my spirit was wanting to go. And it was almost like I had to have that deep dark experience to kind of remove myself from the things that were not meant for me and cause me to start to redirect on a path that was more in alignment with my spirit, who I am. So I think
that's so important. What you're saying right there is so important. And so what would you suggest to a person who may be going through that? To stay open, to stay curious, to ask for help? What would you suggest?
Oh, and I love that word curious. I know you've been using it a lot lately, and it's a lost skill in humanity right now, to be curious about what somebody else is going through, to be curious about, well, okay, so that's what you're thinking, but I disagree. Well, why don't you ask, why are you thinking that way? So that, yes, being open, being curious is huge. I joke a lot that I think I spent probably 2 years in unemployment that I did not need to spend, because I kept saying no to things that showed up that actually were part of my
If I can just jump in here real quick, and
Sure.
say that when we have that curiosity, when we feel like we're out of alignment with what our soul came here to experience, when we allow ourselves to spend time in the quiet, God will speak to us. We get so busy running around doing things and filling our lives with things and busyness because we don't want to sit in the stillness. When we sit in the stillness, God talks to us and we can get back and closer to our authentic self, which then leads us on the path to our purpose.
And that's so important. For me, learning how to recognize the voice of God, the voice of spirit. They say that the Holy Spirit whispers. And so the Holy Spirit is not going to jump up and down and smack you in the face. It's going to be, as Reverend John say, when you get quiet and you inquire. Hunger, knock, seek, hunger, ask. To me, anything we ask for, we're going to receive. Maybe not in the way we think it's coming. Things come wrapped in some pretty strange packages sometimes. And sometimes we're ready to throw it away, but we need to unwrap it because that's the exact answer to the prayers that we have been praying. But a disciplined practice for me, I had a spiritual awakening in February of '86. And I would sit every day and tell my kids, I'm meditating. I'd be asleep. I would be asleep. It took me a while. But the first time that I slipped into that place of no thought, into that place of absolute stillness and oneness, I was hooked. There was no way that I was going back because nothing in my life compared to the peace of that moment. That's the peace that passeth all understanding. What are some scriptures or affirmations or some of the things that you share with people in your counseling that may help someone who's listening to us now?
hmm I would say, be still and know that I am God. That is one of the biggest ones, as well as affirmation is, I am loved, loving, and lovable,
Wow.
because we are loving human beings and we are capable of being loved. And so embracing that in who you are.
And so everything that happened in your relationship really did not say anything about your self-worth, did it?
It did not, I'm sorry, say that again.
I said, what happened in your relationship back then when all this
Mhm.
happened, it really was not an indication of your self-worth.
No, it was not an indication of my self-worth. It just happened because things needed to happen that way so it could nudge
Right.
me in the direction so I could live out my purpose.
Right. And that's important for people to know. I was counseling someone recently who felt like after 6 or 7 years that this man didn't love her and she wasn't lovable, something had to be wrong with her. And that's not the case. Everybody, as you say, everybody has an agreement, has a sole purpose. And uh, the soul is never going to let us rest. We're never going to get away from that. And a lot of times we don't recognize this. The soul saying, no, you can't go that way. You're going to go this way. Because that's our heart's desire. Our soul has the wisdom for our life. But the life of the spirit makes no sense to the rational mind. It makes no sense whatsoever. And so when we spend time with spirit, when we're quiet, when we ask for guidance, we begin to recognize and acknowledge the voice of spirit. For example, so I've learned something about muscles and how they work and how you keep your body strong. I'm just learning that at 71. I knew about the mental muscles, but the spiritual muscle is the same way. The spiritual muscle, when you use that muscle, when you use faith, when you speak into existence the things that you want, my experience is that we find that muscle is stronger, so that in times of crisis, we have something that just comes up from within us because we fed ourselves. And in times of crisis, we're not lost. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. He that is within me is greater than he that's in the world. Let's bring Cheyenne back. And I could just talk with you all day, but let's bring Cheyenne because I want to know about the panel that's going to happen this morning and who's going to be on it.
Right.
Sure. And we were doing our best to try to bring a variety of people to the table that could talk about their experiences from different perspectives because, again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. We know that there's a lot of mental health professionals who are working very hard here in the Triangle and everywhere to help people. But at the same time, there's lots of things that are helping people in recovery processes, whether it's recovery in a grieving process for having lost somebody, or whether it's recovery from a suicide attempt that was failed. There's lots of other things that people don't often hear about. And so that's our desire with this event, is to be an adjunct to the mental health professional community, to be complementary to them. We know they have a place. We're saying, well, there's another place here as well. And we're kind of borrowing a term from Duke University. They talk about integrative medicine.
Yes.
And that's a very important thing that a lot of people have not heard enough about. I mean, Duke has an integrative medicine clinic here, and it's all about bringing, the best of both worlds together and integrating them in a way where it can have the greatest result, the greatest impact. Because here's a sad fact that most people have never heard. I wouldn't know it if my husband hadn't run for governor here in 2012. But the fact is that as a society, we are spending more money than anyone else in the world. We're number one in terms of the amount of money we're spending on healthcare. And we run about number 40th in terms of the results we're getting. So
Wow.
that's horrifying to me. And
That's
so
startling. Wow.
well, and we, it's held true over time. Sometimes we're 38th or 39th, other times we're 41 or 42. So, we're saying there's something that's not working quite right here. So let's see what we can do to integrate. So, one of our panelists is actually a mental health nurse. She actually worked in our state hospital for mental health, and she's been through both a brain tumor and traumatic brain injury. And
Is it okay to share her name yet, or is that okay to
oh
share?
yeah, that's fine. Her name is Doreen Berryman.
Okay.
And so she was totally engaged in just following traditional healthcare, but she found out that she had to step outside of that and start to implement some other modalities to actually really start to accelerate her personal healing process. And when she came out of brain surgery, she said, if I had not been paralyzed at that moment, I would have killed myself, because she says
Wow.
I knew how to do it. And so that was where she's coming from. And then
And the
go ahead.
truth of the matter is, with the healthcare system as it is, the integrated medicine is so important, especially with women, and even more especially women of color. But there's not as much information on, say, women and heart attacks compared to men. There's just not enough data, not enough research, not enough physicians, not enough women doctors who know enough about the woman's body. Cheyenne, I think it was you and I that was talking about postpartum depression.
Yes.
After my second child, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what was wrong with me, because no one had discussed it. And I think, tell us a little bit about your experience.
Oh my goodness. I thought my life was over. I really did, because postpartum depression for me got me to a place where I couldn't function. I mean, I was feeling guilty because I couldn't even really take care of my baby. My husband had to kind of take over. I ended up having my mother, who had been working at the state mental hospital in Vermont, basically came to my house and dragged me into her car and said, "I'm taking you there." And I'm like, they're going to lock me up and I'm never going to come out again. I mean, I was scared to death, but I was totally non-functional. I was unable to sleep. I remember trying to drive my standard shift car, and I completely had forgotten how to do that. Whoever heard of that as being part of a depression cycle? But it
So
was.
it's really important. The medical field, and I thank God for the medical field. If it wasn't for the medical field, I would not be alive. What is also true, because it's not either or, it's both and. What is also true is that the medication we are taking is killing us. There are many people who used to be in the pharmaceutical business that are now speaking out about this. The medicine that we take for high blood pressure destroys our kidneys. And so there are side effects to everything. And there are also holistic approaches that you can use that's not pharmaceutical. So to me, the perfect scenario would be what you're doing, inviting the mental health field to collaborate, because we need all of it. When I was going through depression, I wouldn't survive without medication. I barely survived with the medication. What
Yep.
I know now, though, is that my diet has a lot to do with it. The amount of vegetables and fruits, not eating processed food, sugar and salt, and then stress. We don't talk about stress and the impact of stress on our lives. Stress is a killer. And I'm convinced that
Yes.
there are people thinking about suicide just because of the stress of daily living. And again, that's by design. This capitalistic system is designed to keep us struggling and surviving, because people struggling to survive are not creative. They don't challenge the system because they don't have enough energy to know what the system is. And so there's this whole systemic issue going on that's anti-life, anti-health, and that this is what this event is looking to do. Tell us about the rest of the day, because we're starting to run out of time. So just lay it out for us, and tell us what you need, how we can help.
Sure, absolutely. Well, and I will make mention the panel discussion is going to be live streamed. And definitely, and that was something I wanted to mention to you, Reverend Johns, is I want to get connected to that person at Unity who said they were available that day. You know, I need to get an invoice from somebody somewhere so we can make sure that we can pay that person to live stream, because you know, I'm finding people all over the country who are interested in this conversation, and the live stream is going to be free, but we're asking people to register so we can make sure that they know where the live stream can be viewed. And I'm even encouraging watch parties on that. So we've got a senior center up in Boston right now who's been begging my friend to do a suicide prevention event there because seniors in their assisted living facility are committing suicide. And so we're like, well, we're going to organize a watch party there and get them all into a recreation room where they can all view it together and then have a discussion about it. So, you know, I want people to know it doesn't matter where you are, you can tune into the live stream. And then after the panel discussion is the wellness experience. And we are encouraging people to come into that wellness experience and try out and learn about some of these things that, you know, your MD doesn't know about these things because it's not part of their training in medical school. We don't blame them for that. It just is what it is. So come and experience for yourself and see what might be helpful to you.
What
or
time
to
will
someone.
this be? What time will it be and where is it?
It's right there at Unity. It's going to be, because the panel discussion is 10 a.m. to noon Eastern time, and then the wellness experience will be 1 to 4 at the same facility. So, you know, we want people to come check it out. And then after that, 4:30 to 6:30, we're going to be gathering as many people as we can in Dix Park to be able to just let's put our collective energies together, bringing people together in prayer, in visioning, in masterminding, with a common goal of being able to heal more people and have less people on this trajectory of suicide. It's a huge, powerful thing when you bring people together. So there is no cost for people to go, but again, we're asking them to register. And that's really because the city of Raleigh wants us to do that for crowd control. So we're hoping to find lots of people, and if they're faith-based, that's great. I say whatever the God of your understanding is fine by me. Let's come and put our collective brains together and let's make a difference far beyond this event.
Well, you know what I come to realize, and you had a lot to do with this in our processing over the past couple months. You know, I'm an ordained minister. I'm a recovering Pentecostal, and so you would say I'm just realizing this, but there's so many things that we hear in religious circles that don't make sense. For me, the Holy Spirit, what that means now is the whole Spirit. It's where 2 or 3 gather in my name. That's what it's about. It's about when Cheyenne and Tami and Audrey come together with the intention of healing or serving, that the wholeness of that, this something happens that's greater than the individual. And I firmly believe there was a gentleman in town and he moved away, and I often wonder how he's doing. He was a psychiatrist who had his own mental problems, but he used to tell me almost every day, we need the Holy Spirit, Audrey. We need the Holy Spirit. And that Holy Spirit comes from community. It comes from gathering. It comes from being with, being close and up close and personal, being authentic, learning how to listen. What do you need? Tell us. You need some money? You're raising funds? Tell us about that.
Absolutely. And again, I'll put QR codes underneath these videos that people can just scan and be able to go right to a page. You know, because yes, we are looking to raise funds. Part of the purpose of this event is it is to raise awareness. It is to educate, but it's also to create a fund where we can subsidize people who may not have the ability to access some of these complementary therapies. Because again, they're not covered typically by traditional health insurance. So we are setting up a fund, and you know, we're wanting to be able to reach more people. This is probably, you know, people are saying, please document everything you're doing. This needs to be replicated in multiple places. And I have to agree. So absolutely. And anybody can get to, I call it our hub site. It's ignitethespark.co. So just like it sounds, ignite the spark, SPARK.co. And at the bottom of that page, there is a link to our donation page. And people, somebody wanted to become a sponsor of the event, we can give them advertising on our live stream and be able to reach people anywhere in the world. So, we've got that
So
ability, but also to donate.
Tax deductible, Cheyenne? If someone donates, a donation tax. Okay, so tell us a little bit about that.
Because they're being done through the Hope Institute. So We Care Partnerships Network, which is one of the companies I co-founded, our partner, Richard Mabe in Reedville, Virginia, has the Hope Institute, which is a 501c3. So this is a collaboration between We Care and Hope. And so anybody who wants to make a donation or even the sponsorship is all going to the Hope Institute, which is a 501c3. And, a letter can be provided for tax deduction.
Wonderful, wonderful. Reverend Johns, why don't you jump back in and give us some closing remarks, some final thoughts?
Okay. Well, I would say that someone, first of all, if you are experiencing, if you any kind of depression or feeling a sense of hopelessness, know that you are not alone. There are resources out there. And be able to talk about it, erase that shame, put that shame behind you, because it's not about you. It's about getting better. That's the first thing. The second thing is that if you know of someone who is experiencing the darkness or depression or hopelessness, please reach out and be there for them. If you are a resource, then please feel free to go to the website that Cheyenne was just talking about and sponsor, and as well as donate funds, because this is a really, really important event, and too many people are losing their lives and unnecessarily.
Thank you, thank you. Well, my own commercial here for Global Leaders Coalition. This is an example of what we do and why we do it. Many leaders are out there alone, flying solo with no connection and no support, especially if it's a leader of integrity, honesty, and really wanting to serve. And so the first thing we are is a community. It's a community of leaders, and we're talking about a new paradigm of leadership. We believe firmly that the old paradigm, the patriarchal paradigm of top down or bottom up, we've moved past that. Leadership now is co-creative and collaborative. And so if you are a leader and looking for support, we are just beginning. We are a startup, but we are excited. We're going to be hitting the road, traveling through the Northeast. We want to hear from you. We want to support you. We want to know, first of all, what is it you're doing? Every city, I've been doing grassroots work now probably longer than I want to admit, probably 40 years. But every city that I have worked in, including Santa Barbara when I first came here, there are nonprofits, there are resources, there are activities that someone who lives down the street don't know about. So for instance, a young woman who was the project manager for my event had 2 teenage daughters and was not aware of several programs within walking distance of her house that was for teenagers. And so one of the things we want to do is just spotlight, because in every community, there are leaders, there are people doing so many wonderful things in this country. We hear the bad news. I want to tell you, from my experience, we have people doing amazing things, and we want to spotlight them. We want to support them. We want to be able to fund them because again, we live in a world where it seems as though throwing money at politicians or throwing money at people that don't need it seems to be somehow the mindset. What we're talking about is give money where it's going to make a difference. Give money that's going to impact someone's life. There are people who don't have enough to eat. I live in Santa Barbara in a pretty wealthy high-end building. And I know that there are people here that don't have enough to eat, because seniors, our retirement income has not kept pace with inflation. And so we just want to say, for a Global Leaders Coalition, we are proud of Cheyenne. we are delighted to meet Reverend Johns. This is a success story. This is what we are about. We want to thank you for listening. Cheyenne, you get to take it away. Final words. Thank you for listening. Thank you for people who will hear the recording. And thank you for everyone who will go on the 9th. When is the concert again? The 9th of August?
August 9th, 7 p.m. at First Alliance Church in Raleigh. And then the main event, September 21st, starting at 10 a.m. At Unity of the Triangle.
Okay, and you're going to share all that information you're saying with people?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, the flyer that you posted actually has all the QR codes on it, but I'll also put those in the comments. So, my final thought is, every single person watching this, you have the potential and the ability to be part of the miracle we're looking for that can help to eradicate suicide.
Oh, that just got me right in my heart. Wow. You are part of the miracle that we're looking for. Wow. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Reverend John. Thank you, Cheyenne. Love you.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
God bless.
Bye-bye.